That's not a level playing field. If we want to have a level playing field that we're actually awarding students intrinsic value, something that they're good at, something they've accomplished. First of all, it makes more sense to award those kinds of things. It makes more sense to award an effort or an achievement that is truly striven for, as opposed to saying, you're good at reading, math, science, social, and science, right? The fact of the matter is, in the real world, once we sort of go beyond high school, there's so much more to the world and much more to our existence than math, language arts, social, and science. But all through school, they've been told these are the 4 core subjects that you need to know, and these are what we're going to award you on. I'm also going to say that I agree strongly with Joe in that you have those kids who are so extrinsically motivated by the piece of paper, that when they don't get it, it's not about handling. And I think one of your rap hackers at the start of the interview indicated that it teaches them to take defeat or take failure with some degree of grace. And I think that doesn't happen. I think with awards, kids get a lot of anxiety. If I don't get the award, if I don't get that piece of paper, that says something about me as a person, and I don't think it does at all.
I think there's also the aspect of the pressure that maybe is coming from either the culture at home for the children or the parents. And
well, you can speak to it probably better than most, having your daughter
in a Chinese school,
right,
and so my opinion then is based on something more a balance, because if you get too uber competitive, you end up with a situation in China where 99% is a fail, pretty much, in the eyes of the child and the parents.
I wouldn't have done too well in China. That's
No, and so it's a real diminish to the self-esteem and things like that. And so finding something in the middle, I think, is a lot better. And I was just thinking that maybe for kids who are on IPP programs, that maybe there could be awards or achievement levels for children that are on IPP. Maybe they get 80% in their program that is different than the mainstream program. So working with that kind of an alternative.
Yeah, like the analogy would be, like, for example, with math 30 or math 30-1 or 30-2. So one is a more academic, pure stream, and one is a bit more of an applied stream. Does an 80% in math 30-1 equal an 80% in 30-2? Should it? It depends on, I think, a lot of different factors, but mastery of the curriculum is only one component of what makes an education successful.
St. Basil cited self-esteem as their real main contributing factor for why they wanted to do away with the honor roll and awards. Clearly there's much more to it than that. Is that a bit of the wool over the eyes for some of these parents, do you think? Is that a valid reason, self-esteem, for kids that are not obtaining honor roll status? I mean, I don't think kids don't expect to be rewarded for something that they haven't earned. I mean, clearly kids know when they've earned something, But is this a valid argument, self-esteem?
You're the psychologist, but I would think that that self-esteem comes from many different factors. It can come from the clothing that they're wearing,
Absolutely,
or the way that they're raised at home, all sorts of things. So to pin it just on how many honor rolls or the achievement records, I think, is not looking at the bigger picture of where self-esteem for a child comes from.
Well, but, I mean, I'm sure clearly you've dealt with a lot of kids.
Absolutely.
With self-esteem issues.
Yeah, with tons of self-esteem issues, largely academic.
It is largely academic.
They're bright kids. They're kids who are quite capable, but the way the school's set up for them isn't effective. Okay, so if they're allowed to, for example, in language arts or social studies, explain their ideas, explain how they understand the topic, they do fine. That's not the way it's done in most schools, though. Most schools, you're given a paper and a physical test that you have to write. Well, if you have a writing disability, that knowledge is there, that ability to understand is there. You can have a great discussion and a very powerful discussion with someone who actually really understands the material, but it doesn't come in a paper, so they end up getting a 30%.
You would mirror that sentiment, Joe?
Well, there may be an argument to be made about protecting the self-esteem of those who don't get the awards, but I'm actually maybe even more concerned about the students that grow up thinking this is the point of school. I've known too many students that have become completely obsessed and distracted with their performance and their achievement, so much so that in one of the number one problems I'm seeing with someone who cares way too much about their grades and about their performance and have a lot of anxiety over achievement is that they stop taking risks. If you provide a child who wants to get on the honor roll with two choices, an easy assignment and a hard assignment, I mean, they're going to choose the easy assignment in order to gain the highest grade possible because they've been told the point of school is to get the grade. Now, we might get angry or even frustrated with the child and say, that darn child is lazy. But I actually think we need to take a step back and see how rational they're being. The game of school has a certain set of rules, and they're playing the game. And in the end, they end up gaming the system and not coming out with the kind of education that we want. Sometimes our actions don't match our aspirations. And so this is why, and I really enjoyed the comment that was made at the beginning by the doctor, that we need to be much more mindful about what we're doing with the kids. On a superficial level, it may make a lot of sense to reward children for their performance, but there are a lot of unintended consequences. Another one is that the kids end up seeing learning as nothing more than a chore because they just have to do the learning to get the grade. As soon as you start prying on the children's extrinsic motivation, that is, learn to either get a reward, the grade, or avoid a punishment, a low grade, they stop having a love for the learning, and they just want to get it done with, get it over with, so they can get the reward or avoid the punishment. And this really does miss the point of school. And I think the adults end up getting frustrated with the kids, but the kids are just as frustrated with the system.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after this. Stay with us.
I think the idea of abolishing the honor system and award ceremonies and all the rest of that is completely ridiculous. Unless you're going to change your entire society and everybody's going to live on some hippie commune somewhere where everybody's equal, by the way, communism, then it just doesn't work. The entire society, if you're going to go through elementary and junior high and high school with grades such as good job, so-so, or needs improvement, you're going to get out into the world and you're going to get a reality slap in the face. So unless you're going to change all of Canada, it's ridiculous.
Always animated Adam, but I think, he probably echoes the sentiments of a lot of people. Karen, how would you respond to what Adam said?
I would have to say that I kind of disagree. I think that, like I've sort of mentioned before, that there's a room for a balance. I think it's interesting, maybe back to what Joe was saying, is there's a lot of parents that bring their children from other cultures or countries to Canada, and they're interested in the traditional learning model over the regular public or the Catholic school system, thinking that it's not tough enough, it's too easy, it's too soft. And I've heard that from parents who I've relocated here to Calgary. And so they want their children to go into a school that is on par with the school that they left from Pakistan.
Sure, but what about Native Canadians? Is the end game to have this utopian society where there's he alluded to communism potentially? I mean, that seems like a huge stretch, Doctor. Is it ridiculous?
Maybe a bit of a stretch. I think
sure.
some of the comments that were just made by the commentator, Adam, I think it holds a lot of sort of intuitive truth for a lot of parents. They hear that and they're like, yeah, it is a competitive world, and I want my child to be well prepared, and if that means they have to have a tough time in school, so be it. I completely disagree. I think we do live in a competitive world, absolutely. That I'll stipulate to, but we as adults have a bit of choice in our area of competition. You've chosen a certain career. All of us have chosen different areas of practice in our lives that largely we had some degree of choice in. I largely, in my career, did not choose to do anything related to math because that was not my thing. But for 12 years, that was a part of my package.
To essentially,
and I had no choice, right? So if there was communism in any situation there, it was coming from the other direction in terms of a mandated core curriculum that we had no choice about, but we were being evaluated on and being awarded on. As adults, the competition is, the slap in the face, of, oh my gosh, I was doing so well in school and now, the big hard world comes out. I again disagree. I think, we don't go into fields that we're not comfortable with if we can avoid it. So I don't think there's that slap in the face at all. In fact, quite the opposite. I think a lot of the students I work with, graduate students, when I'm teaching at the university, are people who've been very successful at the awards winning. And I think I'll go back to Joe's point, is like that piece of paper becomes valuable and they chase it. And when they get into, they've always done well, they're in graduate school. Most of them are outstanding students. They do really, really well. But there's kind of a theme that comes up over time, which is if I don't get an A, I'm absolutely shocked. How is it possible I don't get an A? And the belief is that they're starting with an A, and then they work down.
Work their way down.
As opposed to, no, you're
I think
starting
we
from
undersell the
nothing
real
and going
world,
up.
right?